Let's set the scene. It's October 25th, 1415, St. Crispin's Day. We're on a muddy field in northern France, and one of the most unbelievable, most legendary battles in all of military history is about to go down. This is the story of Agincourt, and how a totally desperate, cornered army somehow pulled off an impossible victory.
This old drawing here, it's basically a snapshot of the moment right before it all kicks off. You've got two armies staring each other down, poised for a fight that, let's be honest, by any logic, should have been a complete and total slaughter for one side. You've got the English, this tiny, worn-out force, facing the full might of the French kingdom.
And this, right here, is the central puzzle of Agincourt. On one side, you have King Henry V's English army. I'm talking sick, exhausted, and just completely outnumbered. And on the other side, the French. A huge, confident force. They're well-rested, and they're fighting on their home turf. So how in the world could this end in anything but an absolute disaster for the English?
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we first have to understand just how bad the situation was for the English. I mean, they weren't just up against a bigger army, they were trapped. Their backs were literally against the wall.
The sheer David versus Goliath scale of this is, well, it's just staggering. The best estimates we have put the English army at around 8,000 men. The French, they might have had as many as 25,000. These aren't just bad odds, you know. In medieval warfare, this is pretty much a death sentence.
And believe me, those numbers don't even tell the whole story. Before the first arrow was even fired, Henry's army had just been through a grueling 260-mile march in just over 2 weeks. Dysentery was tearing through the ranks, their food was almost gone, and now their escape route to the port of Calais was blocked by that massive French army. They were sick, starving, and totally cornered.
So, how did they win? Well, the first key to this impossible victory wasn't a man, and it wasn't a new weapon. It was the ground beneath their feet. The battlefield itself became their best, most powerful ally.
And this is where you really see the genius of King Henry V. He chose his ground perfectly. See how he positioned his small army in this narrow gap, squeezed between two thick forests? He created a natural bottleneck, a funnel. The huge French army couldn't use its numbers to swing around the sides and surround them. Nope, they were forced to come straight at the English, right into a killing zone.
And then there was the mud. It had been raining heavily, and the whole field was just a swamp. This quote from an eyewitness says it all, really. The French knights, weighed down in all that heavy armor, were getting totally exhausted before they even reached the English lines, just by slogging through mud that was sometimes knee-deep.
But the landscape, that was only half the story. The English had another massive advantage, the longbow. And this thing wasn't just a weapon, it was a piece of technology that was about to completely own the day. You see, it could be fired 3 times faster than a French crossbow. That's a huge difference. An English archer could let loose a dozen arrows before a crossbowman could even manage 4.
Now, this is so important to understand. Henry's force wasn't just an army with some archers in it. It was an army of archers. An incredible 80% of his troops were longbowmen. This wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate strategy, and man, was it going to pay off.
And their tactic was as simple as it was brutal. First, they jammed thousands of sharpened stakes into the ground in front of them to stop any cavalry charge cold. Second, they just unleashed a terrifying storm of arrows. We're talking thousands upon thousands to break up the French advance. And third, once the enemy was a confused, wounded mess bogged down in the mud, the archers dropped their bows, grabbed hatchets and swords, and charged right in. But look, a victory like this isn't just about what the English did right. It was also about what the French did catastrophically wrong. Turns out, their own overconfidence and complete lack of organization played right into Henry's hands.
It was just a total cascade of blunders. They were so sure they were going to win that all the French nobles were literally fighting each other for a spot at the front, hoping to get some glory. This just created a dense, chaotic mess. Then, in a truly baffling move, they put their own archers behind their main force so they couldn't even shoot. And to top it all off, their first cavalry charge got completely wrecked by the mud and stakes, and the panicked horses turned and ran right back into their own men. The result was this horrifying, chaotic human traffic jam. You can see it in this picture. The French knights, weighed down by 50 or 60 pounds of steel armor, were packed in so tight they could barely even lift their arms to fight. Trapped by the mud below and the press of their own army from behind, they were just easy targets for the much more mobile English soldiers.
After about 3 hours of absolutely horrific fighting, the battle was pretty much over. The English had won. But the brutality of the day wasn't finished yet, and what happened next is still one of the most controversial moments of the entire war.
I mean, the scale of the French defeat was just unbelievable. Around 6,000 of their men were killed. The casualty list reads like a who's who of the French nobility. We're talking 3 dukes, 9 counts, a whole generation of France's leaders was essentially wiped out in a single afternoon.
Now compare that to the English losses. The numbers aren't perfect, but most historians put the English dead at around 600. 600. It was one of the most lopsided, decisive victories in all of military history. But right in the middle of this triumph, with thousands of valuable French prisoners captured, King Henry gives an order that just shocks everyone. Kill the prisoners. I mean, this seems to fly in the face of everything knighthood and chivalry was about. So why? Why would he do it?
The reason came down to cold, hard, brutal military logic. It looked like the French rear guard might be getting ready to attack again, and the prisoners, who now massively outnumbered their exhausted English captors, could have easily just picked up swords from the battlefield and attacked from the inside. It was a terrible, grim choice, but to Henry, it was the only way to make sure his impossible victory actually stuck.
So, the battle was won, the army was saved, and Henry went back to England as a conquering hero. But the story of Agincourt, well, it was really just getting started. It was about to transform from a bloody battle into a national legend.
And you can actually see how the story changes just by looking at the art. On the left, you've got a picture from the time. It's chaotic, messy, a real scrum. On the right, a painting from a few centuries later. Suddenly, it's heroic, romantic, with King Henry looking like a shining warrior king. This is how the grim, muddy reality of the battle got polished over the years into a legend of English courage, thanks in large part to writers like William Shakespeare.
And that really leaves us with the big question that people still debate about Agincourt today. Was it just a fluke, a lucky win thanks to some rain and French arrogance, or was it a masterpiece of strategy, a victory earned by brilliant tactics and superior technology? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, but it's that tension, between luck and genius that makes the story of this impossible victory one we still talk about.